How's it going, everyone? I'm Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel, where you'll find some of the most fair and honest game reviews out here. And today we're talking some Nintendo Switch stuff with Sakuna of Rice and Ruin from Jakejames. I've wanted to tackle this game for quite a while, so enough dilly-dallying, let's just dive right into it. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin was released in November 2020 for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, and PC. It's an action-adventure game that focuses on the story of Sakuna, a princess goddess who lives in the heavens called the Lofty Realm. During a heavenly banquet hosted by the gods, Sakuna takes the blame for allowing a group of mortals to enter the sacred Lofty Realm and make trouble by accidentally destroying some of the sacred food. It doesn't help that Sakuna acts like a spoiled brat too, which only makes things worse. To teach her a very humbling lesson, her mother, Lady Kimetsuki, banishes her and the humans to the Isle of Demons, where she is tasked with eliminating the monsters that reside there. If Princess Sakuna is going to complete her quest and protect the humans with her, then she's going to need to learn some humility and the value of hard work very quickly. It's up to Sakuna to grow the rice to survive the harsh seasons, while also clearing out the demons as she explores the island. There's a lot of different things happening in Sakuna, some good and some bad. There's a nice element of Japanese mythology mixed in with fast-paced action and resource management. But does everything come together in Sakuna of Rice and Ruin and end up being fun to play through?
My princess, please desist from this japery. You must fulfill your own vital duty. When you return to your seat, you must not lose yourself in drink again.
This again? You're so bothersome, Tama. Being drunk has no bearing on my ability to fulfill my duty. It's child's play for...
So the story of this game is something that doesn't really bother me. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's kind of like right in that middle ground, where it's a neat take on Japanese mythology within a video game, but it's not something that's going to be like gangbusters. It's not a story that you need to see or see right through to the end. It's just okay, at least in my book. The one thing I will say about the story, which is more related to the cutscenes and the way that they're handled, they just seem to be a little bit random. They kind of don't happen, at least, when you really expect them to. Every time you end up going back to the main hub area, sometimes you'll have like this random cutscene that'll just pop up. Even when you just transition to the next day, a cutscene will happen which isn't of real consequence to the greater story at hand, but it does have a little bit of character development. It has little banter between some of the characters here, and that's fine, but I wish that it was a little bit much more significant to the grander stuff that's happening within this game. Again, there's just kind of like really silly stuff. It's very anime if I had to really describe it, but as far as it being like super annoying, not really. Again, the story of this game is just okay. With that out of the way, let's talk about gameplay. Now with this, I'm going to split it up into two different sections, because I feel like this is the best way to approach this, because Sakuna has a lot of stuff to tackle here. If there's one thing I can say that is the best part of Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, it's the combat and the platforming. However, I do say that with a few nitpicks. First off, the controls and the combat is pretty solid overall. You jump and slash your way around the stages populated with demons as you explore the map of the island. An interesting part of the combat is the crash mechanic, which allows you to knock enemies into one another for bonus damage. This helps with some of the tougher fights later on in the game, allowing you to clear out groups of small enemies with ease while also attacking some of the larger targets. Sakuna also has access to a number of abilities that allow you to mix up combos with powerful attacks, including techniques that let you swing around enemies for complete control of the area. Unfortunately, this is where my love for the action platforming disappears shortly after this, mainly because of the day-night cycle and the exploration objectives and stages that put a hard stop onto the game's pacing. Sakuna has this day-night transition that happens in the background as you explore levels. When nighttime comes, the strength of enemies increases and your ability to fight them is significantly reduced. And boy, let me tell you, I really don't like this. It absolutely sucks when you're fighting and all of a sudden every enemy you encounter gets a huge boost because it's nighttime. What's worse is that your vision gets impaired because the whole stage becomes completely dark. It's annoying as hell. Later in the game, you gain the ability to use a lantern that lights up dark areas, but this takes so long to obtain. Nighttime forces you to leave stages and return back to the home base, where you can pass time and wait for the daylight to return before you can re-enter a stage. This gets so frustrating because it stretches out the time you spend exploring levels, which also delays your ability to complete objectives that can open up new areas. Speaking of which, I also dislike how you need to complete stage objectives in order to increase your exploration level in order to open up brand new areas. I constantly found myself going back to places trying to figure out what objectives I could do in order to get to the next area and progress the story. This honestly became a chore and it wasn't fun. It doesn't help that some of the objectives require you to defeat enemies at night, which is nearly impossible in earlier portions of the game. You're just ridiculously underpowered against enemies at night, so you can't even attempt those objectives. Bottom line, I wasn't a fan of how this was handled. I found myself hitting a brick wall multiple times at what felt like was no fault of my own. Now we'll get to the whole rice growing thing and how it's connected to the strength and the levels of Sakuna in just a bit. I want to save that for the next section. One thing I do want to harp on though is the boss fights and some of the larger fights that you get into. The bosses themselves are not that bad. They're actually very manageable and they're very well kind of planned out as you progress through the game. However, the thing that I keep harping on and the thing that I think ruins everything about the combat with this game is the day and night cycles. Because once you hit that nighttime, or at least once the nighttime comes in, all of a sudden all your enemies, including the bosses, get a ridiculous boost to all their stats. And it is totally like just ruins everything. Like it's so annoying. I've actually had a few instances where I'm in the middle of a boss fight and I'm getting close to defeating it. All of a sudden nighttime will come around and the boss not only gets all of its stats like boosted up and it deals a ridiculous amount of damage to my health bar, but all my attacks are just completely useless. I'm doing like 1 damage to this thing on top of all the other little enemies that are just like, you know, jumping on top of me and just completely destroying me, forcing me to leave the stage, go deal with the stuff in the home area, then come back and have to redo the entire boss fight. That to me is super annoying. It's one of the reasons why I hate the day-night cycles in this game, outside of just like the whole tilted nature of how strong enemies can be. To me, that is just something that just ruins the combat. It is so annoying. It'd be one thing if like, you know, time didn't pass through normally when you're actually exploring through the stages, but the fact that you're kind of like on the clock as you explore each area, that is just super frustrating, man. It's one of those things that is just, I don't know why somebody thought this was a good idea, or at least they probably didn't playtest it enough to see if it was like actually a good idea. For me personally, I just think it ruins everything. And it sucks that I have to say that because the way that stages look and the way that they're laid out are actually pretty decent. I'm actually kind of cool with the way that stages, depending on which area that you're in within the aisle, actually going through them is actually pretty fun. I think that's kind of cool. Now, the other thing about that though, I do have to say, is that certain areas that you visit or certain stages that you could go to, there's nothing really going on for them. You only go to like one specific spot to search for like certain items, at least, you know, for a period of time. And that's used to not only gather items, but to also pass through the day hours, you know, so that way you could probably go from daytime to nighttime or from nighttime to daytime. That I totally understand that, but it kind of just feels like these stages are just thrown in there for padding. Even though, again, you're getting items in them, it's just, it doesn't feel like they were needed. I would rather go to another stage where I could actually explore, fight enemies, and get even more items than just visiting these areas that just have like this one room. It just feels unneeded. Okay, let's talk about the thing that I feel like is really going to split people down the middle, because there are just other aspects outside of the combat and exploration about Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which are interesting in nature, or at least in concept. But in execution, maybe not. This is honestly going to be the most divisive part of this game, at least to me anyway. I find myself really not enjoying this side of Sakuna's gameplay at all. The rice management is a super important part of how you approach everything else, mainly because the rice that you grow is directly tied to Sakuna's strength. Plot-wise, this is because Sakuna is a harvest goddess who draws power from the rice grown, but gameplay-wise, this affects her overall stats in combat. You need to engage with the rice minigames in order to get the best stats that you can while exploring each level within the game. This means you have to play through every minigame multiple times to manage your rice the right way, which quickly becomes a drag to deal with. The worst part about this is that if you decide to take a shortcut and play the minigames incorrectly, your stats and combat suffer greatly. Your attacks won't be as strong and your enemies will run right through you, forcing you to go back and grow rice again. I feel like I'm put into a corner here and forced to do things that I just don't want to do. The minigames require you to do things like planting seeds, harvesting, tilling the rice, and so much more. All of this contributes to how well your rice grows and how much experience and stat boost that you get and obtain overall. If you decide to take shortcuts, such as letting one of the other characters complete some of the tasks, the quality of the rice will suffer greatly by the time you harvest it. You'll then receive less experience and levels gained for Sakuna. So this means you have to sit there and do each of the steps in order to get the most out of your rice, and this can take a while. I'm sorry, I totally get where they're going with this for the plot, but this is just not fun to play. These minigames bring everything to a stop, taking me away from what I feel is much more interesting about the game overall, and that's the combat and the platforming.
All the Kappas say they will return the base. So, that was more than idle posturing. How unexpectedly scrupulous.
But what could they do for us, I wonder?
Now that we've stretched our territory across the surrounding fields, the eastern forest, and the northern valley, we may be able to expand our rice fields with the Kappa's help.
Would it not be reckless to entrust them with the field work?
Okay, look, I totally get that all this stuff is very unique and helps contribute to making Sakuna of Rice and Ruin a very unique and different game compared to other stuff out there. However, all the rice management stuff with these minigames I found to be very annoying, very aggravating, very frustrating, and just overall more than anything else, it just wasn't fun to play through. It'd be totally different if all the different steps with these minigames, you could skip over them without getting a significant penalty to the way that your character grows. I think that is the worst decision, period, especially if I don't want to engage with these minigames and I just want to go back into the combat. I totally get the narrative connection with that, the value of hard work and all this other stuff, but just, it's not fun to play as a game. This is one of those instances when a game needs to be a game. There should have been something different there, or at least given the option where you just don't have to deal with this stuff if you feel like it's just getting too much and it's just bringing things to a halt. But with the way that it is right now, I'm just super disappointed because this stuff is very unique, this stuff is interesting, this stuff is cool in concept, it's very different. But as a game, nah, it just didn't connect well with me, man, not one bit. So what can I honestly say? Can I recommend that you pick up and play Sakuna of Rice and Ruin? I don't think I can recommend this to most people. While I think that the combat and platforming is the best aspect about the gameplay, everything else around it is super frustrating to me. I really dislike the rice minigames and how they significantly impact the pacing, and I really hate the day-night cycles within the stages. It just sucks how tilted the strength of enemies can be in combat when that happens. The plot doesn't really bother me, if anything it's a neat approach to Japanese mythology in a video game, but that isn't enough to overshadow all the issues that popped up in my experience playing Sakuna. I should also mention that I did run into a number of bugs and glitches at random spots, one of which I talked about on my Instagram, but that's not the main reason why I'm feeling down about this. I really wanted to like Sakuna of Rice and Ruin so much more, but in the end, this came up short and wound up being a big disappointment for me.
I pray that she learns much in the course of the hardships that undoubtedly await her.
Please take care of Sakuna for me.
I will guard her with my life.
Goodbye, Sakuna. I'm sad, but a little relieved as well. I wonder why that is.
And there you go, everyone. Those are my overall thoughts about Sakuna of Rice and Ruin for the Nintendo Switch. Remember, this game is also available for the PS4 and the PC through Steam. It's crazy, too, because I've seen this game ever since it first debuted at E3. I got to play it there for the first time, both the console and the PC version. And it looked very neat. It looked very cool. Again, it was right up my alley. But seeing it now in its complete form, as a complete experience, it just didn't do it for me, man. I wanted to like this game so much more than what I ended up doing, but I gotta be honest and I gotta be real with all of you. This just wasn't it for me. So if you're like games that are a little bit different for the Switch or just in general, try it out for yourself to see if you actually like it. But as far as my recommendation, I can't give it, man. But of course, like always with any game that I review on this channel, that's just my opinion about Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. Let me know your own thoughts about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, have you gotten a chance to play Sakuna yet? Did you like it or hate it? What are some other games that have tried other unique things, whether it was successful or not? What are some of the ones that you guys could recommend that I try out or anybody else try out? Tell me about that stuff down below in the comments section. Thanks a bunch for watching the video. I really appreciate it a ton. I'll have more videos for you to enjoy here on the side that I know you'll love. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon too. Don't forget to visit my Patreon linked below for early access to new videos every week, and join the Discord server too. It's linked in the description box below. You'll definitely love being a part of it. Thanks again, peace out, and stay epic everybody.